But there are a bunch of quacks out there, and what I always love about doctors, everybody thinks their doctor is the best. Is that possible? You never hear somebody go, yeah, he's okay. He's mid-level. He might leave a sponge in you. He'll probably addict your children OxyContin by the time they're 12. But he's good otherwise. He's got one of those tongue depressors and one of those stethoscopes. He's a real doctor. Right? And I'll tell you right now, here's another thing. Does anybody ever ask a doctor where they graduated in the top of their, if they graduated in the top of their class, and do you ask to see their license? Are there fraudulent doctors out there? Why don't most people, and this has to do with the prestige, and this is why I'm making a point about this. Why don't most people go, hey doctor, let's see your diploma, let's see your license, I want to see your grades and your transcripts, I want to see any complaints that have been filed against you. Why don't people do that? Your life is in their hands. They can kill you with one mistake. My grandma went in and changed her medication. She was dead 5 days later. Can you see why I have issues with doctors? But why don't people ask these questions of doctors? And forgive me if you're going to be a doctor, but you should be aware of the way some people feel about doctors. And don't do these things. Why don't people say this stuff to doctors? It seems reasonable to me. If you take your car to a mechanic and he says it's going to cost $10,000 to fix it, are you going to just believe him? Why don't people ask these questions?
They assume that they know the known.
Yep. They're given the benefit of the doubt. What happens when you give people the benefit of the doubt and you don't, like Bernie Madoff, what happens when people give him the benefit of the doubt? People take advantage of it. Okay? I would estimate half of the doctors in the United States are absolute quacks. Their first response is pills and surgery. That's all they care about. How much money I can make off this sucker. How many unnecessary surgeries can I perform? Why are you giving 93-year-olds who are about this close to death hip replacement surgery? Why? Seriously. I know that's Granny and you want her to be able to move around, but come on, man. You need a $50,000 surgery on a 93-year-old woman? There's profit behind that. That's the only reason why you would do such a ridiculous thing. Okay? Why is lipitor $300 a bottle? I mean, the absurdity of this. Conflict theorists say it's all a big scam. They want you to live longer so you can keep paying taxes and keep feeding into the system, although look at Social Security, it's not helping. Anyway, so let's get back to the class thing. We'll talk about occupation later. And again, those of you who are going to be doctors and stuff, if you don't like what I'm saying, then do something about it. When you become a doctor, do something about it. Don't get mad at me for bringing you the message of the American people. Okay? When I see an MD on someone's license plate, man, that's a con artist. And then it's never a Volkswagen or a Honda. It's always a Mercedes or a BMW, isn't it? Or a Rolls Royce or something. Do nurses drive around in Rolls Royces?
She's got a seahorses holding up a bird bath. She's got a couple of cobras. Cobras in it.
All right. So now let's talk about style here. So I'll turn the camera on for a second. Why was it evidence that there was very little diversity there? Because everybody had blonde hair. Blonde hair, a dominant trait, meaning if somebody has blonde hair and a woman has blonde hair and a husband has black hair, what color of hair is the child going to have? It's going to be blonde. Look at Tiger Woods' kids. Are his kids blonde? No. So what's going on here with upper class people in the Hamptons? Why are they all blonde? Because they're from the same genetic strain. They're all Northern Europeans, or most of them are. Okay? And there's very little diversity, not only among, I mean, look, in the upper class, Germans marry Germans. Irish marry Irish. Polish marry Polish. English people marry English people. They don't have, there's no such thing as an English pride parade, is there, in the United States, is there? You know why? Because the people who have English in their background, Anglo in their background, are wealthy, most of them. Except for me. But I'm part Welsh, so that's why they discriminate against me. Some of you don't even know what Welsh means. But anyway, so was the Hamptons diverse? Was it diverse? What was going on there? You had Rockefellers marrying who? Nobodies?
Other Rockefellers?
Or some, it almost sounded like it. What they were saying with that one woman is her name was Rockefeller because she married one. But it almost got the impression, I almost liked the fact that they made this impression that there was inbreeding going on.
Yeah. That's the vibe I got.
Yeah, here's the difference. Here's the difference with class in marrying cousins. If you're rich and you marry your cousin, you're royalty. Seriously, the royal family intermarries. You guys don't know this. That's why a lot of them are hemophiliacs. If you're poor and you marry your cousin, you're a hick from West Virginia. Why do you think that wealthy people marry other wealthy people? What's the point behind that? Or is that what's really happening?
Because like keep the money in the family.
Yeah, and keep the class. You saw with the two people from Staten Island. Was this causing tension? She seemed to have a serious attitude, didn't she? About this, dogging her husband like that. This guy's sitting there thinking, I can do better than you. You know, or very minimum, being by myself is better than being with you. Okay? Again, let's go to that couple. How's that, some of you, let's project 15 years in the future. How's this going to turn out? Let me give you a few scenarios. Let's say they're still married 15 years, they have kids. What are the kids going to be like? Are they going to be clear on what their class level is? Let me put it another way. Who's going to run the family? Who's going to run the household, you think, is going to be responsible for teaching the kids what class you're in, and this is how you behave? Who do you think? The father or the mother? Yeah, look like that guy. That guy was just clinging on, white knuckles. Don't push me off the cliff. And sometimes when I look at stuff like that, I wonder, why is this guy doing this? And why is she doing this? Why do you think you're getting married? You think they love each other? Why do you think you're getting married? You think it's because society tells people to get married? You think, how many people here think that one of the biggest reasons why people get married is because society expects you to? Nobody? I think there's a few people here. Right? Where does the pressure come from to get married?
Parents.
Yep, that's a big one, right? My mother died when I was 21, so I don't get this all the time. Or never got it really, but I assure you, if she was still alive, and now I'm in my late 30s, and I haven't even come close to I haven't even become close to being engaged with somebody, and I assure you that would drive her mad. She'd probably try to set me up with people. There's no doubt in my mind. And if I was a woman, it would be even worse. Why? If I was 38 or 39, what starts to happen? Right, just the clicking, the ticking of the clock, right? But nowadays, 55-year-olds are having babies, you know, with fertility. Although the doctors will tell you it's not good for your body. I mean, look, I've seen healthy 23-year-old women have babies and almost die. So imagine what it's going to do to a 55-year-old. My mom gained like 110 pounds after she had me. I mean, it destroyed her entire body. It took her years to work the weight off. I remember when I was a kid, I always thought, part of me almost was like, I'm sorry for doing that to your body. So you always be like, it's okay, you know. But it was like, I never said that out loud, but I remember her telling me like what happened to her health after she had me, and that was the last time she had a kid too. But anyway, so let's talk some general stuff here. So let's go back to the video itself. So what were some of the things that you noticed in the video that maybe you hadn't noticed before about class? What are some of the aspects maybe that we didn't talk about that you saw there that people were using to designate class? Anything? We talked about a fair amount, but there were a few things we didn't talk about. You know, you have a participation rate in this class. I didn't ask you what the atomic weight of boron was. Come on, other people who haven't talked before I start pointing at you. What were some of the things you saw that we didn't talk about? Or how were they constructing class? That guy at the end was saying a whole bunch of stuff. Remember the guy with the piping? And you have to say it like this. What was he saying? Specifically, we talked about clothes, but what specifically were they saying? They were naming brand names off. And by the way, the Richie Rich guy was giving the tour of the mansion. Let me correct you about something, buddy, and it's going to embarrass you in front of your elitist friends. It's only champagne when it's from the Champagne region of France. Otherwise, it's sparkling wine. I'm telling you, ask anybody who knows anything. Now, maybe that was champagne. But again, so what were some of the things here? Remember, he asked that woman, what's classy? It's probably not classy to have Nikki Hilton in the party.
To have an old
Unless you got
Mercedes.
14-year-old boys there. What?
To have an old Mercedes. To have an old Mercedes.
Or a Mercedes in general. I still find it funny, again, while I report that Porsche and Mercedes and Volkswagen were all involved in Nazi collaboration. For whatever that's worth. And you can sure Bavarian Motor Works was in there too. That, to me, personally, I will not buy a car that was involved in any aspect of the Holocaust or World War II. That stuff bothers me. To other people, it's no big deal. Whatever, who cares? Big deal, Ferrari was hanging out with Mussolini. What's it matter? That's no big deal to other people. To me, that's a big deal. Just like I won't buy a Chrysler either because it's a bad company. Okay? Honda never slaughtered people in the streets or was involved in this kind of stuff. Sorry if you guys do have German cars, but I'm telling you right now, look up the history. I'm not making this stuff up. Okay, why would I? I'm going to have a vendetta against Mercedes. I'll tell you one thing, though. Out on the streets, what cars do people who drive the most aggressively drive?
Beavers.
Most of the, I don't know what it is. Is the gas pedal light on that thing?
The nicely car that wears
Do you ever drive a Beaver?
I have driven my, the one I did drive at Stony Brook was one of the teachers I was TAing for. She had me move her car around. The pedal was light. You touch it and it just wants
Wasn't
to.
it nice?
That
though?
car wanted to take. I wouldn't say nice. It was a nice ride. I didn't like that light pedal. I can understand why people in BMWs do 90 because all you got to do is just the engine just wants to take off. The engine just wants. It's like a race car. It just wants to go. And then there's nothing that wants to stop it. So I don't know if it's these people who are just being aggressive or whatever. I would say as well is, what is the point of an SUV that's a Mercedes or a Porsche? SUVs are supposed to be taken off-road. They're four-wheel drive cars. They're supposed to be taken in sand and dirt and mud. Does anybody take these things out in the mud? This is what drives me crazy. I'll get behind an SUV when it's raining. If you have a four-wheel drive, what should you do when it's raining? Put it in four-wheel drive. Do these people not know that these things have four-wheel drive? Because I get behind them and they do 10 miles below the speed limit. Like they're scared. And I would say to you, if you're scared that your car is going to flip over, how good is your car? You ever ridden around in an SUV? They dance on the tires. I mean, it's like, whoa. It's like being on a boat. Okay? Also to make the road unsafe because you can't see in front of them. And they're bigger, and one of the reasons why gasoline is $3.80 a gallon is because these things you get 12 miles to a gallon. Okay, and I know some of you sitting in here are going to go get in your SUV. Okay, go look at the gas gauge when you get in. Okay, anyway, at least put it in four-wheel drive when it's raining. Okay, what are some other things here? Some Mercedes. What else? What was the part about those little concrete things? And the gnomes. What was the point of that? I don't understand that. Somebody explain that to me. What was the point of that?
I like people doing ridiculous things just to be like accepted or whatever.
Is it ridiculous to put concrete things in your yard?
I mean, like,
What class did it belong to? Yeah, which is it's middle class, but it's a certain type of middle class. Middle class is working class, right? Because you can work in an office and be middle class. What they meant is plumbers and construction workers and whatever. So, but do you see a big burly construction worker putting a stupid concrete duct in his yard? So, gender is a part of this too, isn't it? Do men and women view class differently? In the past, the class and power, did they do that? Do they view that differently? Like, for example, do men put more emphasis on class or do women? Why? Because I don't think everybody agrees with you. Why? It's okay. You can support your position. This is not right or wrong. Why do you think that?
Like watching that lady and that guy talking, it kind of seemed like she was more into that, and he was just like, whatever.
Why do you think, if you are correct, why do you think men are not as interested in class? Do you think men are maybe more interested in income than like looking a certain way? So if I'm a plumber and I make $400,000 a year, I'm not going to go out and buy a Mercedes, am I? I may drive the same old beat up piece of crap truck. Some of you, your parents, you know, your dad is like this. He makes money or has got a lot of money or maybe he even inherited money or a house and he won't change his old shoes for nothing. Wears the same old stained t-shirt out to the restaurant with suspenders on and stuff and nasty old boots. And you're like, Dad, you're a millionaire. What are what are you doing? And it highlights that point about money versus the idea of social class. How many people here think, though, that men... Go ahead.
I was going to say something about that couple.
Go ahead.
I think it was kind of how they were nurtured. Like, that girl was, she was brought upon a...
You mean the two in the little handsome cab or whatever the hell that was?
She was brought upon in an upscale Staten Island, so she thought class was more important, while that guy was a police officer, and
And she thought they were unclassy. Right? She criticized him, his class, and the police. What did he keep doing throughout the entire conversation? Sort of deflecting it, like, what is your problem? And you could tell that what do you think? I would love to have a camera when she first brought him home. Probably in his police uniform, too. You think that scene went well? It was probably a lot of preparation beforehand. He was probably trying to figure out, she was probably coaching him. All right, when you meet my dad, this is what you want to say. Right? Don't shake his hand too long. Okay? Don't sit on the couch. Go sit in the... I love... When you know you're moving up in classes when you have a living room and a family room. And the living room is sort of like a museum. Nobody touches it. And like they put plastic crap on the couch. And there's knickknacks and stuff. And like it's got to be a horror show for a 4-year-old child. Because you know the 4-year-olds just grab everything and stick everything in their mouth. And if you've ever been around a 4-year-old, they find it funny to take things and throw them up against the wall. And see, some of you know. I've been around 4-year-olds. They're crazy. If they were adults, they'd be arrested for like menacing society or something like. But they're 4-year-olds, so they don't know better. So, and they think it's funny that they throw things. But anyway, so again, does anybody here think that men are more obsessed with class than women? Because if I'm a woman in this classroom, what I'm suggesting is you're trying to say that women are materialistic. Let me put it another way. Go ahead.
I think men like think about their name, their last name more. So I don't know about.
So how am I Hilton?
Yeah, like Rockefeller, they thought it was like the Rockefeller. I just think they worry about their name and how much money they make.
So they seem to be less interested in clothing and other types of expressions of class.
Yeah.
Like to a man, he could go to, if he's rich, he could go to the opera at the Met and wear jeans and a shirt and no cologne and not show up in a limo. Whereas a wealthy woman would be more apt to dress up, spray expensive perfume all over them, spend $200 god-awful dollars or maybe more on their hair, and then take a limo and have to go eat at a nice restaurant beforehand. Why is that? Are women taught that that's what's supposed to happen? Who's the onus on still in this world, even though we have equality of the sexes, of impressing people during a date? With the accoutrements of the date. Who still pays for the ticket to the opera? Also, on top of it, does society put a lot more demands on women looking good? I would say this to the women who don't think this is the case, or to men who don't think this is the case. I get up about 40 minutes before I have to leave the house. And I have enough time to sit around for 15 minutes and drink coffee. How many here are women you can get up and out in 25 minutes? How about to a date? You know how long it takes? Maybe an hour. The only thing that men do differently, and most men don't like doing this because it's really strange, and it's a waste of towels, is take another shower. And that's what I would say to women. You don't know who you're dating. That's not the way they smell. That's not the way they act. That's not the way they look. And that's not who they are. And I would say a similar thing with women. If the men. That's not who you're dating. I don't know who that person is. It's like some kind of a Halloween costume or something that people are wearing and pretending to be other people, right? And when politicians do that, we call them liars. When people on a date do that, it's just the way it is, right? It's just like an assumption. Think about also, ladies, how much you spend on clothes versus men. I went to the store, and it probably shows. I go to the store maybe once every 3 to 4 months to buy clothes. Like the other day, I bought these pants, and I went over to Tanger Outlet of all things. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not going to the mall. Okay. But most women go shopping sometimes once a week for clothes. Sometimes more. How many here go to shopping, men or women, once a week for clothes? Once a month? Every 2 months? Every 6 months? Every year? Okay, so there you go. So it's different. I mean, we don't really know. They didn't hit on this a lot, but what about race and class? Actually, there's another version of this piece that deals with race and class. Were there any evidences here of that people from different racial backgrounds view upper class, what it means to be upper class or middle class differently? To some extent, maybe, right? One of the things was clear, though, in all the wealthy neighborhoods they went to, was there a heavy amount of non-white people in those neighborhoods? Do you think that's because minorities have no money? Or do you think it's because those people are excluded? Let me put it another way. Do you think there's a lot of black people in private country clubs that have been around for 400 years? You think they're going to get in? There are country clubs that were so exclusive, they wouldn't even let wealthy Jewish people in, who, by many people's standards, are white. But they were the wrong religion. I'm telling you. For the longest time, Augusta National Golf Course, which runs the Masters tournament, wouldn't let women in. They didn't even have women bathrooms. You know, it was kind of weird. And if you actually look at it, there's a thing where they talk about this in the book. On page 99, on page 97, it says how the super rich live. There's actually a book written on this called Richistan. That even though wealthy people want people to believe that they're similar to everybody else, are they? Are wealthy people the same as middle class people? Huh? I think from the video, they're certainly trying to make the case that they're different. Does that mean it's wrong to be different? Probably not, to some extent. Here's the other thing. Why do you think wealthy people want other people to think that they're middle class? Or why do you think most Americans identify themselves as middle class? What's the value in that? Both for the individual and for society. So what's the value for the individual to say you're middle class, even though you probably, like Barack Obama. You're not middle class, dude, when you control an army of 2 million soldiers. And you live in the White House. Okay? You're not. I mean, people wipe your butt for you if you want. I mean, that's how bad it gets at these upper levels of class. Okay? What's the point of Obama? What's the benefit to Obama as an individual and as a politician saying he's middle class, even though he's not? Yeah, so he can be identified. I know how you're feeling. Now, he was middle class. Mitt Romney, on the other hand, has never been middle class. What's the benefit to him trying to pretend that he's middle class or that he at least understands middle class people? What's the point? Right, so he can get votes. So he can say, well, maybe I haven't had a hard life, but I know so and so and so and so. What about just for somebody who's not a politician? What's the point? You said fitting in. How do you fit in by saying you're middle class in America? How's that fitting in? Wouldn't you want to be upper class? Don't you want to be in the top clique?
Well, the majority of people, just like you said, there's like a small amount of people that are at the top, and then you have
That's like the elite class. Right.
And then you have like the not so rich people.
I think you guys are missing one thing, and we'll talk about it for society. Do people, right or wrong, and I know there's probably people in this class whose parents have money, and they have money, so I just mean this as a general question. Do people like upper class people? You remember that one comedian goes, there's a lot of pain in blue collar life. Who do you think they blame that pain for? Is there a potential in this country that if people focus too much on class that conflict would break out in the streets? What do you think? Who are these Occupy Wall Street people? Who were they protesting against? What do they call them?
1%.
In other countries, this stuff turns into civil wars. This isn't a game. If you're rich in Somalia, people want to kill you. Like seriously, they want you to die. They want you and your family to be killed. Period. Think about Marie Antoinette running her mouth. Right? People are starving in the street. She tells people to eat cake. Why do you think people? Because just from let's say an objective observer, I think this is a little unfair. Why do you think people hate upper class or dislike upper class people and want to hurt them so much? Is it just misunderstanding, or do upper class people do despicable things, or at least get blamed for them? Let me put it this way: what class was involved in reinforcing slavery and keeping it a legitimate institution in the United States? What class?
Upper class.
Yeah. Who starts wars?
Upper class.
Was Hitler upper class?
I don't think so.
He didn't come from the upper class. Again, when you're the Führer of Germany, I don't think you're going to the grocery store for yourself, and you're not driving yourself, are you? What you could argue if you're upper class is say, you know what? Hitler's an example of why lower class people shouldn't be allowed in power. Right? He was abused. He had no emotional maturity. He was disrespectful. He was vengeful. See, an upper class person would never act like that. Right? This is one of the reasons why people can't stand things like monarchies. Isn't a monarchy an example of an upper class out of control? Aristocracy? Do the British allow the Queen to make decisions? Because they think she's a stupid twit. They have no confidence in these people. And most of the time, I think I'll let you guys answer this. What are some of the accusations that people make at upper class people? Besides causing social chaos. What are some of the things that people say about these people? Like, let's take this woman who was running her mouth to her husband. What kind of behavior was she engaging in that might be considered to be deviant? Yeah, so she was, and snobby is a form of kind of superiority, isn't it? And I'm better than you. It's a light form of narcissism. That because of my name, blah blah, I'm much better than you. You think George Bush thought anybody could run this country better than him? Do you think Bill Clinton felt that way? Maybe, who knows, right? It's part of the reason why some people didn't like George Bush, because they thought he was a spoiled, rotten brat. Is that part of the reason why people don't like upper class people? Especially people... Let me put it another way. Is there a difference between earning your way to the upper class and just getting inheritance? Do people in America treat those two sets of people differently? People who earned it through their own work, even like Zuckerberg, or more specifically somebody who starts a plumbing firm and then it goes or something like Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut was one store at one point. One store in Wichita, Kansas, and then it expanded out. And the person who made it was a millionaire. Is his accomplishments and reputation, should they be considered the same as somebody who, like a Rockefeller, who just is basically born into a wealthy family and is handed $100 million for their 18th birthday? Why do Americans look at that in a bad way, or do they? What's more acceptable? Who's going to be more acceptable? The person who earns it, or the person who had it handed to him? How come Americans don't like people who have stuff handed to them? I bet it'd be a different story if you had $100 million handed to you. I don't think you'd have the attitude, would you? Why? What's behind it?
I think people are jealous.
That's
they'll
a big
talk
part of
about
it.
how they hate people, but if they were kind of in that position, they probably would.
Yeah, if your name was Hilton, I don't think you'd be going, these damn rich people. I don't want the money, Dad. Give it back. I want to work my way up. What is this working your way up to wealth? What is that related to? What ideology or idea, concept is that related to?
American dream.
Right. So we got this idea. Remember that one guy said, and the one guy, there were two views here, that people could change their class and people couldn't change their class. Now we'll talk about this here in a second. We'll end the class with this. This is evidence of the reality of whether or not the possibility of the general public rising in class. But let's deal with this question. Can you become upper class? And here's the other question. Once you become upper class, are you spoiled so you can't go back? Like once you become king, it's hard to be a peasant.
It's like totally conditional.
What do you mean?
It depends on like what's going on. Like how you.
Well, that one guy claimed though that it was almost nearly impossible for someone from the middle or lower classes to pass off themselves as an
But
upper
that's
class.
that's the idea of like class as a personality, as opposed to like how much money you have.
So you think it's more of the element that maybe that's part of it, but that guy is missing the idea that that class is about power, and money is power. And if I got power, who gives a damn if I burp at the table and wipe my nose on the tablecloth, because I can hire some people to kick your ass because you keep telling me I'm nothing. That power is what matters in the world. And one of the things they said was, remember they compared class to high school. And what concept is most important in high school? It starts with a C, being what? Well, no, it's a 4-letter word. Cool. It should be a 4-letter word too. But what's cool really mean in high school? What's it really mean? I just talked about it. What's it really mean? What's cool translate into? It's power. Isn't it? When you're cool, you get away with anything. When you're cool, you set the trends. When you're cool, you pick what girlfriend or boyfriend you want. When you're cool, everybody wants to know who will hang around you after school. Right? That's power. And that's what we're really fighting about here, isn't it? And I think you're making a good point here that some people say, this is about power. I don't give a damn if you got a house out in Montauk and you know how to put your pinky up when you're eating a finger sandwich or something like that. That's stupid to most people.
Yeah,
Well, again, and I think it's a good point, but other people say it's not stupid. Okay? It's just the way it is. And if you try to fight against it, it's just silly.
yeah, but that's just like an icon. When you do like certain things, I don't want to say like stupid, ridiculous things because people do it all the time. Like things like picking your pinky up to drink your tea. It's like there's no need to do anything like that at all. So,
All right, and let's go back to the concept of middle class. Why is it good for society for most of Americans to consider themselves middle class, even though a lot of them are lower class? Why would it be bad if people label themselves as lower class?
people are going to look down on them.
For society. Why do you think it's a bad idea if a lot of people started identifying with the lower class? What did Marx say the lower class was eventually going to do?
Rebel.
Yeah.
Rise up.
It's going to be blood in the streets. Is it that bad in the United States? Do people take class so seriously that it turns into fights? Are there class riots in this country? There's not, are there? This is a big reason why. Was that guy, remember when they went to the ball in Baltimore? Remember the guy who said these people aren't this bar? Did he sound happy about that? Did he sound like this is some kind of a joke? That he thought this was funny? Or was he really upset? He sounded like he was going to kick the hell out of these people if they kept coming back here, right? I mean, he was upset. Like, those are the people over there! Right? That's the language you hear when people talk about racism or any kind of schism, any anti-Semitism. Those people. Right? When you hear people breaking things into black and white, it's a frightening reality for most Americans. And I think a lot of people will tell you very much in the conflict theory perspective that the United States media and the U.S. government, as well as individuals, go out of their way to make everybody believe that everybody's middle class, because if people were really broken down into their true class markers, they would be basically, Marx looked at, anyway, I don't have the marker here, but Marx basically said there's two classes, there's the upper class and everybody else. You know? And society fools you into thinking that you, first of all, that you're middle class when you're really not, when you're really lower class, especially if you make right around the minimum wage, and that you can get to the upper class if you work hard enough. Is that true? Can everybody be a millionaire? Can everybody be president of the United States, or an actor, or all this other stuff? Do upper class people close doors off on purpose to make sure their children get the best benefits and nobody else does? Some of them at least. Is this where maybe some of the antagonism comes in? That George Bush went to Yale when he didn't have the grades to go? Doesn't that bother people? He got straight C's at Yale and still got into Harvard Business School. And let me tell you something about Harvard. You know who else was a graduate of Harvard Business School? Bernie Madoff. And again, we talked about this. There's certainly an impression among middle and lower class people, upper class people are insensitive. They don't care. They're judgmental. That this comes to harm. That they view especially lower class people as subhuman. Okay? And if you look at the history of aristocracy, that's exactly how they treated people. I don't know if that's the case in America. There's some evidence to it. Let's talk about social mobility. So this partly challenges the beliefs that one guy was talking about. Let me try and make this bigger. Excuse me. Anyway. There we go. So this is an article from Fareed Zakaria. I think that's what his name is. I think he used to be a commentator. He was born in a foreign country. I can't remember if it was Egypt or what. It might even be Jordan or something. Anyway, he actually does a lot of stuff for CNN too. He's quoting a Washington Post ABC News poll from late last year. He says, reveals what we have all sensed, that most Americans are increasingly concerned about the growing gap between rich and poor in this country. The issue quickly divides along partisan lines, as do so many, with liberals urging government to do more to reduce the gap and conservatives opposing such measures. Overall, a significant majority does favor government action. But on an issue even more significant than income inequality, there does appear to be bipartisan agreement the importance of social mobility. Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels, who's a Republican and was on TV because of the Super Bowl, accurately noted that upward mobility from the bottom is the crux of the American dream. So now we're talking about this concept of the American dream. The idea is, if you work hard and you obey the traditional American dream, or you might want to call it the modern American dream, you work hard, you pay your taxes, you obey the law, you treat your family well, you have good friends, you hopefully work your way up from maybe floor supervisor to manager to executive, and then you run in a company. Like, you often hear this crap, they'll talk about like the head of McDonald's, and he started in the kitchen. No, he didn't. When he was 15 maybe, but he went to business school. Right? And he only started in the kitchen probably because his parents forced him to work. Some wealthy people have more of a conscience than other wealthy people force their children to work. Hey, Hiltons, look into that. Because your children are out of control. Okay? Nikki's not so bad. Paris is an absolute disaster. And that, when people think about stuff like that, they look at stuff like that. That's a serious problem. And so people sell this idea that you can work hard. Nowadays, there's a new type of American dream where people think they can get on American Idol and be rich by the time they're 23 and retire. And I would say Exhibit A is Kelly Clarkson. Okay? I mean, she's not even close to the 10th largest star in the world. William Hung is one of the most famous people from American Idol, and he was one of the worst singers on that show. You can't name me an American Idol that's really that successful, besides Carrie Underwood. That's about it. I mean, where the hell is Fantasia at, and Jordan Sparks and all the rest of them? You know, so this nonsense that reality shows can make you famous, or like Jersey Shore. There is a thing. Those people were absolute nobodies, worse than nobodies, some people would say, because of what a terrible value system and personalities that they have. You know, I mean, what's the one guy say? Tanning, laundry, and what's the other one? The gym? Right, so he can have sex with strangers and catch all kinds of diseases and teach children about that's what happens, you know, when you're promiscuous and disgusting. And stuff like that. Didn't they sort of almost have like orgies and threesomes and stupid stuff in their little house? I mean, it's disgusting. And those people make $1 million an episode or something dumb, or $1 million a season, something like that. You think that's right? You think that sits well with Americans? That some jackass on Survivor is a millionaire and I got nothing, even though I worked 40 years at a factory and I can't even pay my medical bills? You think that goes over well? That some 22-year-old punk who got drafted first in the NFL draft makes $30 million a year when I've been working at the law firm for 25 years and I'm not even a partner? You think it goes over well with Americans? And that's the postmodern American dream, that you can spill coffee on yourself and sue McDonald's. That's what people want to do now. And it's a very dangerous dream because there's no productivity behind it, is there? Like now the American dream has gone from working hard to some people's idea is marrying a wealthy person. That's their idea. Or just being friends with a celebrity. That's their idea of something that's cool to do. So we have this concept of the American dream, and a lot of people think that it's a false lottery, that it gets people chasing stuff that they can never have, so that the society can get all their money and get them to cooperate. If you actually look at it, if you believe in the original version of the American dream, that's going to prevent you from challenging the system. You're not going to break laws. You would never engage in some kind of revolutionary action against the upper classes. It makes people docile, and it helps to control them. The American dream, according to conflict theorists, is an attempt to control undesirable or unhinged elements in American society. Because people who don't believe in the American dream, what kind of attitude do you think they take towards the U.S. government, towards the U.S. economy and corporations? Do you think they take a positive attitude towards the way corporations behave? No, a lot of them are anarchists, and you could actually, the government will call these people terrorists. Like, let me ask you something. Do you think anybody's going to take Occupy Wall Street seriously if they continue with peaceful protests? Do you think the government responds to peaceful protests? I mean, this is a government that shot 6 students at Kent State and killed 4 of them because they were throwing rocks. Okay? And I hate to say this to the Occupy Wall Street, and I don't want to see this happen, but until you start doing something more serious, no one is going to listen to what you have to say. Do you think the people in Occupy Wall Street have given up on the American dream? Do they see through it like the Matrix? They took what's the blue pill or whatever it was? Which one's the one you take and it like reveals
I
reality?
think it's the red pill.
Is it? I'm not taking anything Lawrence Fishburne's got in
Yeah, I'm gonna take 2 pills from a guy.
the hand. Yeah, it's just some goofball shows up talking about
Jagged.
you're the chosen one. Yeah, I chose you to test this poison on you anyway. Okay, dudes, I got nothing better to do anyway. But do you think people at Occupy Wall Street, do they still believe in the American dream, or have they abandoned it?
They started throwing Molotov cocktails at Wall Street itself.
Right, that's probably not
That's
going to
not
happen
true.
because the National Guard would come in and be a bloodbath.
Did you ever go there?
Let's play hypothetical though. Let's say, and I hate to do this on camera. Let's say Occupy Wall Street gets crazy and they start assassinating people and they start throwing bombs and they mess up the economy. And the National Guard moves in and kills 200 people. Whose side do you think the American public would be on?
It'd be on Occupy Wall Street side. Yeah.
You think so?
Yes, it's gonna
How many
be-
people here think the government would be on Occupy Wall Street's side after they were slaughtered in the streets? How many people here think that the American people would, at the very minimum, view Occupy Wall Street as terrorists, and 2, be scared to speak out against the government? Who here would think that the American public would support the government? Nobody else wants to play? This is your
You
participation.
go either way.
Okay. I know it's a hypothetical, and you guys don't want to deal with this reality, but I'm telling you right now, look around the rest of the world. Do you think a $15 trillion debt is going to turn out well in this country? Do you think people aren't going to be lobbing things at each other? During the Depression, they were bombing Wall Street left and right. They don't put this stuff in your history books. This is what bothers me about your damn high school textbooks. They don't tell people that rich people were afraid to drive their Rolls Royces to work for fear of being killed. They don't tell you this stuff in history books because they don't want you to know this. They don't want you to know that Americans have used violence in the past to get what they want. And if you think, and I sincerely hope it's not going to happen, if you think it's not going to happen, though, that's exactly when stuff happens. In 1939, people were convinced there would never be another world war. How'd that turn out? So again, nobody wants to play my hypothetical game. I don't know exactly. I'll tell you right now. I think because I know what the American people are about. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I think they'd be fully on the government side. Ain't no way they're going to align themselves with a bunch of radical terrorist protesters. Are you kidding me? Not a single human being in this country that has a good job would come out in favor of Occupy Wall Street, especially once the National Guard started shooting people. Let's hope it doesn't get to that point. But let's go back to this article here and you understand why maybe some stuff will happen. And the reason why I bring that up is because Marx believes that's what's going to happen. That eventually the government will run out of excuses. And the people will get tired of it. And I'll tell you right now, are people usually in a good mood when they lose their house and have no food? Again, how'd that turn out in Germany? And I know this isn't Germany, but take a lesson. Things don't, when people are starving, all of a sudden a reasonable person turns unreasonable real quick. Okay? And those of you, because when I was a kid, I went to bed many times hungry. Those of you who've never had an instance where you were starving or didn't have the proper clothes or didn't have a place to stay, you have no idea. At one point in my early 20s, when my mom died, and my stepdad wouldn't let me live at my mom's own house and gave me an application to the YMCA. Nice family attitude. I lived in my car for 2 months. Okay? I hate to say this in front of the camera, I had to steal food. I had to steal food. Okay? And it felt terrible. And the only thing I wanted was to pull the pillars down. Just pull it down. If I have to suffer, why am I suffering while the rest of you dance down the primrose path? Let's hope it doesn't get to that point. And nobody shared that view. That's why I'm telling you, the American people will be like, you gotta kill them terrorists. Kill them. Kill them all. Anyway. Some believe we're still doing fine. In his address to the Heritage Foundation last month, Representative Paul Ryan declared class is not a fixed designation in this country, where we are an upwardly mobile society with a lot of movement between income and groups. We'll see about that. Ryan contrasted social mobility in the United States with that in Europe, where top-heavy welfare states have replaced the traditional aristocracies and masses of the long-term unemployed are locked into the new lower class. In fact, over the past decade, growing evidence shows pretty conclusively that social mobility has stalled in this country. Marx said this is a dangerous reality. When you tell people that the meritocracy is in place, meaning that if you work hard and do your job and don't bother other people, that you should be rewarded. Maybe not with billions of dollars, but with a promotion. You should be able to afford your own house. You should be able to have your kids go to school. You should be able to afford kids. It is becoming increasingly less likely that you can afford a family. One of the reasons, and people don't want to talk about this, one of the reasons why the average family has dropped from 4 to 5 kids to about 2 to under 2 is this. It costs an estimate to $700,000 to $1 million to raise a child from birth to 18. And that doesn't include college. And wages have been going down for 30 years in this country. You're telling me that if a man and a woman both work at Walmart, they can afford to have kids? Do you see what's going on here? These are good, hard-working people. They work 50 to 60 hours a week. What is society telling them when they work 50 to 60 hours a week and they can't pay their bills? Is that the American dream to you? Sounds like a nightmare to me. I mean, my God, there's people in China that make more money. You know? In fact, sorry, I overread that. Last week, Time Magazine cover asked, can you still move up in America? The answer, citing a series of academic studies, was no. Not as much as you could in the past, and most devastatingly, not as much as you can in Europe. It's better to move to Europe. And is Europe the bastion of class mobility? Think of England. Can you move in and out of classes real easy there? Not a chance. It used to be illegal to marry somebody outside of your class. They're the ones who came into India and saw the caste system and said, hey, these people are just like us. We get the Brahmin and middle-class people and all these untouchable people, all that other stuff. The British people are like, hey, we got a lot in common with these people. We can just impose our system right on them. They'll understand it completely. The most comprehensive comparative study done last year by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, which I believe is related to the G20 in Bretton Woods, found that upward mobility from the bottom, Daniel's definition, was significantly lower in the United States than in most major European countries, including Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Denmark. Another study by the Institute for the Study of Labor in Germany in 2006 uses other metrics and concludes that, quote-unquote, the U.S. appears to be exceptional in having less rather than more upward mobility. A 2010 Economic Mobility Project study found that in almost every respect, the United States has a more rigid socio-economic class structure than Canada. So now it's better to go to Canada. When I was a kid, Canada was the butt of every joke you could tell. It was like the VH1 of music channels or something. Nobody listened to it. They were playing like Kenny G music. That's what I think. People, when I was a kid, people looked at Canada like Kenny G. Like, why would anybody listen to this? It's elevator music. Like, Canadians were like Diet Coke Light. You know, like they were light, they were like light white bread or something. Like, I mean, you couldn't get any more bland or boring or unexciting in Canada. But now we come to find that you can move up quicker in the economic rung in Canada than you can in the United States. There's only 35 million people in Canada. Their economy's like 1/10 the size of ours. Okay? And don't get me wrong, because I love Canadians in general. But when I was a kid, Canada was equated with nerd, or dork, or stupid, or dumb, or poor, a whole host of stuff, okay? Hate to say it, anybody who's from Canada, and I have relatives in Canada, and they'll tell you the exact same thing. Plus they'll add drunk, okay? Seriously. More than, and Americans drink as much as Canadians, more than a quarter of U.S. sons of top-earning fathers remain in the top 10th of earners as adults, compared to 18% of similarly situated Canadian sons. U.S. sons of fathers in the bottom 10th of earners are more likely to remain in the bottom 10th of earners as adults than our Canadian sons, 22% versus 16%. And U.S. sons of fathers in the bottom third of earnings distribution are less likely to make it into the top half of adults than our sons of low-earning Canadian fathers. Here's the problem, though. They're sort of making an indictment of the American society. Can somebody give me more of an individualistic argument of why people aren't moving up more in the United States? You could almost say part of this fault is a stupid postmodern American dream people have. Why do you think people who have this postmodern dream that they're going to be a celebrity or marry a celebrity, why do you think they have a hard time getting moving into the workforce and making progress? Do they work hard? So there's a problem right there. What else is the problem as well? What is somebody's success highly dependent upon other than society's opportunities, which is a big part of it? What else is it dependent upon? Like, what do we blame homelessness on? On society?
Like just lack of work ethic or something.
Right. It's your lazy, stupid fault. You never trained yourself. Your parents were dumb. You never had any, you never learned any valuable lessons. The lessons you did learn, you never applied. You never worked hard enough. But is that the case? Is lack of social mobility an individual problem? If people were just more motivated, would people move up? Most sociologists, and here's one of these macro-micro debates, will tell you that these things are interrelated. You cannot change these things. That it's social structure and it's individualism. Okay. Plus the recession. One of the reasons why this is the way it is because the recession destroyed a lot of people's wealth. A lot of people lost jobs. So anyway, surveying all the evidence, Scott Winship, a fellow at the Brookings Institute, concludes in this week's National Review, what is clear is that in at least one regard, American mobility is exceptional. Where we stand out is our limited upward mobility from the bottom. And again, people would look at social conditions. When you think about it, these results should not be so surprising. European countries, perhaps haunted by their past as class-ridden societies, have made serious investments to create equal opportunity for all. For example, one of the things, and this I think we'll leave it here and then we'll come back. One of the things that a lot of European countries do is that at their premier universities, do they charge tuition? A lot of universities? No, they don't. If you're French and you score high enough on a test, they pay for your entire education, whether you go to the Sorbonne or whether you go to Oxford.
Isn't it like not that expensive too?
That's the thing. Think about Harvard. Harvard's $42,000 a year just for tuition alone. You ain't going to see that at Oxford. Oxford's one of the best schools, or the University of Mannheim. These are some of the best schools in the world. And when you're given that type of opportunity, it's much easier to move up when you're poor. You don't feel alienated. You don't have to... Think about a poor person going to Harvard that has to pay for part of their tuition. They're going to have to work part-time at a little restaurant or something like that. All the other students in their class, they're going to see them working at some frozen yogurt joint or something like that, making fun of them. They're going to feel out of place. They're going to have less time to study. Are they going to succeed as well as other people? And on top of that, since their name isn't Bush, they're not automatically going to get into Harvard Business School. And in Europe, it's a little bit different. And I think Europe is a little bit ashamed of their past, that they were so class-oriented, and I think they've done things. The government subsidizes things, rent, They subsidize health or daycare. In this country, if you're poor and you want to go back to school and you have 2 kids, what makes that almost nearly impossible? What's daycare cost per week in this country? $100? $200? I mean, my God. Do you think upper class people worry about that? No, they got hired nannies. Usually, many times, one parent can stay home. And I'm not criticizing. I'm not going to sit here and say that's terrible that only wealthy people that they do that on purpose. No, I think what is clear is government policy encourages this individual outlook. That hey, it's up to you. Have fun. You get into Harvard, pay for it yourself. You know. Now I would say something to defend Harvard. In case I get hired there. Anyway, that Harvard does provide a lot of scholarships for underprivileged people. They do. Obama got in. Okay? You think Obama had the money to pay for Harvard Law School? Now, he also had to borrow a lot of money. All right, we'll leave it there. Everybody's going to go to Danzig and kill himself.